Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Learn with Me. I'm Deborah Hanson, and today we're going to look at the key terms for AP Psychology 5.4, Selection of Categories of Psychological Disorders. So I'm not going to lie, this is going to be a really long one. There are 25 of them, so I'll show you them next. Just before we get started, thank you so much to everybody who subscribed and hit that like button and added comments to my channel. It's growing, and I'm so happy to see that. And I love to hear the comments that it's helpful, or can you do this, or can you do that? Actually, the whole idea of doing all the key terms first came from one of my listeners. And so it's been really great. It was a great idea because it's taking a long time to make all the new content, but I want to do a good job so that you have everything you need to know to get that 5 on the AP. So let's get started on our key terms for 5.4. Oops. Okay, as I said, there are a lot of them. So I think there's about 25 in this particular section. So we know we want to get our flashcards ready or our notes or whatever you do, or maybe you just listen to the video, whatever works for you. Actually, let me know in the comments what is your best way to study for all these key terms that we have to do in AP Psych. Because I have students all the time who say to me, what's the best way? Well, we know from psychology that the best way depends on how you learn. So let us know how you learn these key terms, the hundreds and hundreds of AP Psych key terms. If you want to know the essential knowledge for 5.4, that'll be on a separate video. This one is simply key terms, definition, example. Okay, let's get started with the psychological disorders. I think we've seen this one before, but that's okay. I have to say, I find this unit or part of Unit 5 really interesting. I find that I know there's a lot of things to learn, but it's really interesting content. So hopefully you do too. So here's the definition. Patterns of thoughts, feelings, or behaviors that are deviant, distressing, and dysfunctional, interfering with daily life and well-being. For example, a person experiencing persistent sadness, fatigue, and loss of interest in daily activities for weeks might be diagnosed with a major depressive disorder, a psychological disorder that impacts their ability to function at work and maintain relationships. So that's just an example of a psychological disorder. So next we're going to look at ADHD, which is the attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity. So here's the definition. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity that interferes with daily functioning or development. Here's an example. A student struggles to stay focused during class, frequently interrupts the teacher, and often forgets to complete homework assignments. Those are some symptoms associated with ADHD. Next up, we're going to talk about Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD. So this is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by difficulties in social interaction, restrictive interests, and repetitive behaviors. So for example, a child with ASD would avoid eye contact, maybe prefer playing alone, or become upset when their routine is disrupted. Schizophrenia. This is a severe mental disorder characterized by disturbances in thought, perception, and behavior, often including delusions and hallucinations. So an individual believes that their government is tracking their movements through their phone. That's the delusion. Or hears voices giving them instruction. That's the hallucination. Delusions. These are false beliefs held despite evidence to the contrary, often found in schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders. So a man believes he's a famous celebrity despite living an ordinary life and having no evidence to support his claim. Hallucinations. False sensory perceptions, such as seeing, hearing, or feeling something that isn't there. This is often associated with schizophrenia. So, for example, a woman hears voices accusing her of wrongdoing, even though no one is around. Bipolar 1 disorder, a mood disorder characterized by at least one full manic episode, often accompanied by depressive episodes. So a person goes on a week-long shopping spree, spending thousands of dollars they don't have, followed by a period of intense sadness and fatigue. Bipolar 2 disorder is a mood disorder involving at least one hypomanic episode and one depressive episode with no full manic episodes. So a person feels unusually productive and energized for a few days, hypomania, but later experiences weeks of hopelessness and difficulty getting out of bed. Mania. This is a state of abnormally elevated mood, energy, and activity levels, often impairing judgment and leading to risky behavior. So a man stays awake for 3 days straight, starts multiple new projects, and impulsively quits his job to pursue unrealistic goals. Major depressive disorder, that's MDD. You'll see that sometimes in the MCQs. A mood disorder characterized by persistent sadness, loss of interest, and physical symptoms like fatigue or sleep disturbances lasting at least 2 weeks. A woman stops participating in hobbies she once loved, isolates herself from friends, feeling worthless and exhausted. Persistent depressive disorder, PDD. This is a chronic form of depression that's lasting at least 2 years with milder but long lasting symptoms. So, this is longer than MDD. A man feels mildly sad and unmotivated for years but manages to go to work and maintain relationship despite his low moods. Generalized anxiety disorder, the GAD. A disorder involving excessive, uncontrollable worry about various aspects of life, and this lasts at least 6 months. So, a student who constantly worries about their grades, health, future, even when there's no immediate cause or concern, but struggles to sleep due to this anxiety. Specific phobia. An intense, irrational fear of specific objects or situation that leads to avoidance and significant distress. So, for example, a woman avoids visiting parks because she has an extreme fear of snakes, even in areas where snakes are unlikely. Social anxiety disorder. A disorder characterized by intense fear of being judged, humiliated, or embarrassed in social situations. For example, a teenager avoids speaking in class, skips social gatherings because they're terrified of being ridiculed. Agoraphobia. This is an anxiety disorder characterized by intense fear or anxiety about situations where escape might be difficult or help unavailable during a panic attack. So, a person avoids crowded places, public transportation, or even leaving their home alone due to the fear of having a panic attack in public. Obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. The definition is a disorder involving persistent, intrusive thoughts or obsessions and repetitive behaviors, compulsions, aimed at reducing anxiety caused by the obsessions. So, for example, repeatedly washing hands for hours on end to prevent germs, even though the fear is excessive. Oops. Hoarding disorder. This is a disorder characterized by persistent difficulty discarding or parting with possessions, regardless of their actual value, because they are perceived as being able to save them. So, example, a woman's home is filled with stacks of newspapers, clothes, old appliances, making it difficult to move around or use the living space. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, a trauma-related disorder characterized by intrusive memories, flashbacks, hypervigilance, and avoidance of reminders of a traumatic event. So, a war veteran experiences flashbacks of combat when hearing loud noises, avoids crowded areas, and has difficulty sleeping due to the nightmares. Dissociative identity disorder, DID, a disorder characterized by the presence of two or more distinct personality states that control a person's behavior at different times, often associated with severe trauma. You may have heard this being called split personality. That was the old terminology for this. Now it's called dissociative identity disorder. A man alternates between two personalities. One is reserved office worker, and the other one is bold and outgoing musician with no memory of the other's actions. Anorexia nervosa, an eating disorder characterized by extreme restriction of food intake, fear of gaining weight, and a distorted body image, leading to dangerously low body weight. So, a teenager eats minimal calories each day, exercises excessively, despite being underweight and told by the doctors that they are unhealthy. Bulimia nervosa, an eating disorder involving episodes of binge eating followed by compensatory, sorry about that, behaviors such as vomiting, laxative use, or excessive exercise to prevent weight gain. A college student eats a large amount of food in secret, then induces vomiting to avoid gaining weight, feeling guilty and ashamed afterwards. Now we're going to look at the three categories of personality, and I go into more detail on the other videos about these, but let's talk about cluster A, the odd eccentric personality disorders. So this is a category of personality disorders characterized by behaviors that are odd, eccentric, or socially detached. It includes paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypical personality disorders. So a man with paranoid personality disorder believes his coworkers are plotting against him without evidence, avoiding interaction with them. Oops. Cluster B is dramatic, erratic personality disorders. So, a category of personality disorders characterized by dramatic, emotional, or erratic behaviors, including antisocial, borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic personality disorders. So, a woman with borderline personality disorder experiences intense mood swings, fears of abandonment, and has unstable relationships. Cluster C is anxious, fearful personality disorders. So, a category of personality disorders characterized by anxious or fearful behaviors includes avoidant, dependent, and obsessive compulsive personality disorders. So, for example, a man with an avoidant personality disorder avoids social events because he fears rejection, even though he desires close relationships. Okay, so we're going to go through all the list of the 25 of them now. You can choose to do this. I was kind of debating whether I was going to do this part of the video because I always do this, but I'm not sure if that you find this helpful or not. Let me know in the comments. But just going through to make sure you have your cards done, or just like I said, pause the video and see if you know the definition and example of each of the key terms. It's a great way to practice. We'll start with psychological disorders. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, ADHD. Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD. Schizophrenia. Delusions. Hallucinations. Bipolar 1 disorder. Bipolar 2 disorder. Mania. Major depressive disorder, MDD. Persistent depressive disorder, PDD. Generalized anxiety disorder, GAD. Specific phobia. Social anxiety disorder. Agoraphobia. Obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. Hoarding disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Dissociative amnesia. Anorexia nervosa. Bulimia nervosa. Cluster A, odd eccentric personality disorders. Maybe you can give an example of one. Cluster B, dramatic erratic personality disorders. Cluster C, anxious fearful personality disorders. So that's all the key terms for 5.4. I know there was a lot of them, but I think they're very interesting. I really find that this is really interesting part of psychology, and hopefully you do too. But let me know in the comments, what's your best way to study for these key terms? Because I love to hear different ways of doing it. And if you like the actual second part of the videos, also that's really helpful for me to know. So hopefully you found it helpful. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button for me. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time.